Welcome to What Drives You with your host, Mike Gourdet. Human solution consultant from Seattle, Washington. It is now time to sit back, buckle up for the show that drives the asking question of what drives you. And now your host, Mike Gourdet.
Welcome to this week's episode of What Drives You, the show about why we do the things we do. I'm Mike, your host, a human solutions consultant here in Seattle, Washington. Today, we're going to be talking about compassion fatigue. We are also going to be talking about some of the psychology of job searching and the question of the day, which is, why do humans collect things? So hang out. We'll be right back. So on last week's episode, we talked about burnout, and someone was asking me that sounds like compassion fatigue. And then for those of you who may not know what compassion fatigue, that's normally something that I think it's relatively new in the realm of speech or speaking about in the helping fields. Compassion fatigue is often related to fields that deal directly with people that have trauma. And this includes not only counselors, therapists, and doctors, but also first responders. And there are a lot of similarities between compassion fatigue and burnout. So we're going to talk a little bit about compassion fatigue and how it's different from burnout. Now, they share some of the same traits, first of all. Again, we're relating this to mostly it's related to people in the helping fields. And what happens is that when you are in the helping field, or when you are, so let's say, a counselor or a therapist, you're mostly dealing with people and their problems. So you are exposed to a lot of negativity in a secondary manner. And over time, what happens is, especially when we're dealing with traumatic things that other people have experienced, we start taking on residual effects of that trauma. And that's what kind of, there's another term called secondary trauma, or vicarious trauma, which I have talked to some other people, and those two are being parsed out as separate things: compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. But what it means is that as human beings, we relate to other human beings, and when we relate emotionally to other human beings, that is empathy. Some people, and again, everything that we generally talk about is usually represented as a scale or as a continuum. Some people are not very empathetic or empathic, and some people are very empathic. People who are very empathic tend towards the jobs in the helping fields. They tend to be therapists. They tend to be counselors, right? They tend to work in that social work. So there's that emotional component. And I'll get to this other one in just a second. But what happens is, when you're empathic, you experience the emotions of the persons that you're with. And when you experience that, you actually take on the trauma. And over time, that starts to build on each other. Now, this can be like PTSD. This can be a single event that can create this, or it can be a lot of little events that creates this. But over time, we start to feel the effects of burnout. We get emotionally tired. We start becoming irritable. And one of the distinctive features of compassion fatigue is that we start losing our ability to feel empathy for people. We start to get jaded. We start to become more hardlined about things, especially, when we hear a lot of the same similar stories, we start to be dismissive of that. And there's also a side effect, is that we can become over empathic to other things. So there's an interesting trade-off between these two little dynamics. But uh, one of the main differences between burnout and compassion fatigue is onset. Burnout takes a longer time to manifest, whereas compassion fatigue tends to have a quicker onset. Now, that doesn't mean that it happens in 2 weeks or 2 years. It can still take that long, but it's basically assumed that compassion fatigue has a more rapid onset, and it also responds better to treatment. And when I say treatment, that comes down to self-compassion and caring for yourself. Um, so on the other hand, we have the first responders, and like EMTs, police, they are often placed in very stressful situations where they have to deal with a lot of stress. They have to deal with a lot of violence, and that begins to wear on you too as human beings. See, we start to take on well, it's the environment in which we are in. We are molded by the environment in which we live in. So if we are constantly being um, exposed to violence, we are very well influenced by that. Now, what that means is that there's different things that can occur because of that, but the stress of being constantly exposed to that trauma changes the way we deal with things. And in cases like violence, what one of the side effects can be is that we start to see violence where there is none, or we start to overgeneralize things. When someone gets irritated, we may think they're more angry than they are, because we've become very sensitive or sensitized to that stress. And it's the same thing with fear. If we are afraid, we become oversensitized to stimulus that creates fear responses. And so compassion fatigue starts is when we're exposed to this trauma, whether it be emotional trauma or physical trauma. We, as human beings, because of our empathic nature, we start to take on some of the aspects of that trauma. And over time, it's like water over sandstone. It just wears it away and smooths it out, and we start to lose that ability to have compassion. We start to lose the ability to be present for somebody else. We start to lose the ability to feel emotional responses with them or towards them. And you can tell who is experiencing this. And again, one of the big differences between this and burnout is that burnout is almost completely just physical exhaustion. Compassion fatigue is much more related to the emotional hardening and exhaustion that goes with that. But again, one of the primary differences is the onset. So what do we do? First off, it's noticing it. That's really when we are dealing with anything, any problem, we have to identify the problem first. When we identify the problem, that's when we can start taking action against it. So if we find that we are having trouble getting into the groove, so to speak, of our jobs, that can be an indicator of compassion fatigue or burnout. If we find that we're becoming irritable quite a lot, which we will tend to justify. We will find other ways to justify that because that's the way our brain works, right? We will. So if I'm starting to get irritable a lot about hearing other people's issues or something like that, I may say, well, it's just because I didn't sleep well last night, or it's because of this other reason. I had a fight with my spouse, or I had a fight with my children, or I got caught in traffic. We will tend to find external sources for our pain. That's, I've talked about this before, how we externalize everything. We want to find something outside of ourselves to blame for how we're feeling, because that is more comfortable than realizing that the pain that we are experiencing is being generated by us. When we do that, it's easy to justify things, and our brains are set up to do that. That's the wonderful, quote unquote, part of our thinking brain. Our neocortex is a very good justification machine. It comes up with excuses all the time to explain our behaviors. That's the paradox right there, or one of the paradoxes, is that we are emotional beings that try to logic why we're doing the things that we're doing. So figuring out the first piece is understanding and being aware of what is going on inside you. And if we can stay aware enough, we can see that we're becoming more jaded. A lot of times we don't realize that. And people who are like this. People who are in fields where they deal directly with the public, who are just jaded. They may not be rude, but they can be, but they're very just, this is the way it is. And if you don't like it, that's tough. So they have some very hard boundaries around things. And we talked a little bit about that last week too. It's part of the function of these type of things is not understanding boundaries, or not having firm, flexible boundaries around certain things, like caring for yourself. So what is one of the things, what are the things that we need to do if we have compassion fatigue? If we can realize that we have compassion fatigue? Well, we need to withdraw. Again, I talked about this with burnout. We need to withdraw. We need to rest. Take a vacation. We need to process these things. I read an article where Mother Teresa understood this enough that she said that anybody who works with her must take a year off for every 4 to 5 years that they worked with her. That anybody who was helping her for 4 years or 5 years, they needed to take a year off to heal from all the trauma and compassion fatigue that they were being exposed to. So you have to take a vacation. Now, I would love to take a year vacation, but here in the United States, what do we get? We get a week, maybe 2 weeks. It may not be that long that you need to take one, but you need to withdraw and rest. You need to get away from the stressful situations. Talking to somebody is helpful. And so therein is an interesting little thing, is that if I'm a counselor and I'm suffering from compassion fatigue, why would I want to go somebody and offload my traumas on somebody else? That's kind of how this seems kind of weird. But being able to talk to somebody, especially somebody who is in that same field, is helpful because they understand it better. They can empathize more, unless they're suffering from compassion fatigue too. You want to make sure that that's happening or not happening, because the worst thing you can do is find other people to be negative about, because what happens in those dynamics is You start focusing on the negative with each other, and then you start building responses around all that negativity, which can become very anger inducing and vitriolic pretty quickly. But you want to be able to talk to somebody about it. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about their issues, and that's fine. There are other things that you can do to combat this. Another thing you can do is understand that this is a normal process. This is a normal thing. It is not something that you need to think of as outside the realm of normality. Okay. This is part of being human. This is why being human is so hard. Obviously, there are other things like exercise and proper rest. In our culture, we have come to this place where it's almost diametrically opposed to a lot of things. Like there's these poles of operation that you need to do, right? And what I mean by that is that in our society today, it seems to be that if you are a fitness person, you have to be a fitness person, and you have to be cut and healthy and all this other stuff, or you're not. We forget that there's all these little areas in between. So when somebody says exercise and eat properly, we have come to this place where we hear this information so much that we're just starting to ignore this. This is oh crap, I can't think of it. The normalcy bias, maybe. Anyway, the error of familiarity, or the bias of familiarity, is that we get information so much that we stop paying attention to it. And this is one of the ones that we do. You know, we have a sort of a cultural phenomenon that eating right, exercising, and sleep are things that we know we should do, but we don't. We consistently put those aside for the betterment of everything else that we want. And when it comes to any of the things that we've talked about, burnout, compassion fatigue, control, all these things, basic self-care is at the pinnacle of everything that we should start with. We should always start with ourselves before we start with others. But we have taught, and we are taught, that we should be selfless, not selfish. See, and those are two value-laden words that we struggle with. So back to that. I don't know that I can stress that enough, but exercise and sleep and eating properly, those are things that you can do. Another thing is have things that you do that is outside of your business job or whatever it is, right? If you are in the helping industry, you need to have pursuits outside of that. And there are plenty of people who that's all they do. Other pursuits, gardening, hobbies, all these other things that we do help medicate these symptomatic issues that we gather from dealing with all this other stuff. So these sound like very simple ideas. Interestingly enough, in practice, they're very complex when we start thinking about it. But it all comes down to boundaries again. So that's kind of what compassion fatigue is. If there's, I'm looking for some more information on how this is being parsed out differently from vicarious trauma. And once I do that, I will talk about vicarious trauma. But At the moment, let's think of these as more alike than different. Uh, and as burnout is part of this too, these two things are different, but they coexist quite a bit and they look like each other. And I know this is a difficult thing to sort of understand, especially for people who have little exposure to the field of psychology, but it's the same thing with diagnoses. A lot of diagnoses, or a lot, and when I say diagnoses, diagnosis is a label that we place on a variety a variety of symptomatic responses that we see. It's the same thing with medicine, right? You look at all the symptoms and then you make a diagnosis. The diagnosis is the label that sums up all these symptoms. And it's the same thing with psychology. The thing is that there are a lot of things that have similar symptoms or symptoms that are the same but present differently. And based on how those symptoms present themselves is how you make the diagnosis. It's pretty complex. And this is the same thing. Burnout is very similar to compassion fatigue. One of the primary difference between fashion fatigue. Let's talk about that. Fashion fatigue. One of the differences between those is, again, the onset of compassion fatigue is seen to be as quicker than burnout. But one of the very primary things is somebody who's become very jaded, very hard and unempathic, if you will. That's a good primary way of looking at it. That's all we're going to talk about then, right about that topic. Stay tuned. We're going to come back and talk about some of the psychology of job search, which is a field that I've been in for quite a while. And then we will come back and answer the question of the day. So just stick around. We'll be right back. Now, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that everybody here has had to look for a job. If you've been unemployed, if it's, if it's something that you do because you're trying to get a better job, we've all gone through this. And in today's society, one of the primary mechanisms that we use is online application processes. Okay. Now, I've been in this particular field for about 6 years. And but of course I've been around for a long time, so I've gone through this myself. And one of the hardest things that I see with people is depression resulting from job searching. And I've experienced this myself too. When I was in Arizona, where I'm originally from, I really didn't have a problem finding new jobs. And mostly that was because I lived in a place where there was a network available that I could access, and it seemed to be a lot easier, especially when I was younger. So we won't really get into ageism a lot, but when I moved to Seattle, I experienced a whole new realm of job searching, which really was really difficult and psychologically draining because I had no network. So we have primarily two ways of getting jobs in society today. We go through an application process, mostly online nowadays, or we go through networking. Now, those of you who are as old as I am probably remember the days where you walked into a store, talked to a manager, got an application, and again, this is more entry level stuff, but applied, got an interview, and anything. So you were networking back then. That was the primary way of doing this, is that you were walking into places, you were networking, you were meeting with people. Now, with the advent of all this technology that we surround ourselves with, we have created a problem, created a situation which we cannot just walk into places and talk to people. We are using technology more and more to socially distance ourselves from other human beings. And part of that is understandable, because a human, like an HR person in Seattle, gets hundreds and hundreds and thousands of applications a day, simply does not have the time to go through those. I get that. So we've developed this system, but the problem then becomes is that we lack that ability to meet people. And so from a human perspective, we have taken away a part of that ability to network and find employment. There's some statistics that suggest that if you do a normal job search, which is online searching for jobs, it takes an average of 9 months to get a job. You can decrease that to an average of 4 months if your primary focus is networking. So you can see the difference, right? Still networking, i.e., interpersonally talking with people and having relationships with other people, are faster than the technological way of doing it. So what happens? Well, I experienced this myself, and I've worked with a lot of people who also experience this too, is that when we're doing our normal job search, we there's a lot of advice out there that you do, you treat your job searching like you do your job. You get up, you sit for 8 hours, you apply for jobs, blah, 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 and today, what do? We get online, we search for jobs that sound good. We read these completely, it's not like the one ads back in the day where it was almost like a tweet. It's these completely useless, random white sheets that go forever and tell you about all the awesomeness of the company. It tells you about all the awesomeness that you are and how much your awesomeness can be with their awesomeness. And then it tells you what you need to be awesome to be with their awesome company. And then it tells you all. So you just scroll, and then you come to the place where it says apply. And then you have to go and push the button, and then you apply, and then you have to put in scads of dumb information. And then you have to upload your resume, you upload a letter of interest or whatever it is, and you go through this process. And it can take anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes per application, right? So what happens is that this is what we do. And then one of the side effects is that we see is that after a certain amount of time of doing this, people start to become depressed and burnt out. They start becoming fatigued with this process, and they just drop off and they stop doing it. What's going on here? Well, here's one of the things that we're experiencing. Because we are human beings, we are looking for a level of acceptance or even just acknowledgement. And so what happens is that we find this job that sounds interesting, and we read all the propaganda about the company, and we think that's the greatest job ever. I'm a perfect fit for that. And we spend the time doing our letter of interest. We spend the time of putting in the information, and we click that send button, and there's a problem. We don't have any immediate return of acknowledgement. Now, sometimes these companies will backfeed an email that says, "Hey, we got your application. Thanks for applying, blah, blah, blah." Okay. Now, we get that, and that gives us a little bit of acknowledgement, and we can move forward. But the fact is that we often ignore those because we know they're generated from a computer. What we are looking for is some sort of acknowledgement from another human being. And that's what's happening here, is that we are actually getting a sense of rejection because we are not getting any feedback. So we are doing a few things here. We are preloading our success. Basically, we're saying, this is what I want. I like this job. I think this is a great job. I think I would do good at it. So when I do those kind of things, I am actually placing myself in that job in the future. I'm saying, okay, here I am. I'm qualified to do this job. This is the job I want. And so I give myself pleasure, and I give myself an imagined goal attainment. And I talked about this before on New Year's, about how when we set goals, our brain like decides that it already has the goal, even though there's time involved. And then so we get this, what's called cognitive dissonance, because part of our brain knows that we don't have the goal, and part of our brain knows or thinks that it has the goal. So it's creating resistance. This is what happens with job searches. As soon as you apply to that job, part of your mind automatically thinks it has the job. So it starts preparing for the inevitable. You're looking for the invite to the interview, right? Those are the steps. I've applied, now I have to get the interview. So your brain is going that way. The other part is saying, we're not getting any acknowledgement back, so it feels rejected. And just think about this, is that over time, the more I send out and the more I don't get heard from, because I'll tell you, when I did this, when I moved to Seattle and I was looking for jobs, I was looking for jobs all over the place. I was putting in applications all over the place, and I didn't hear back from any of them. There wasn't any confirmation emails. There was nobody call. And this is the first time in my life I had experienced this. And I've come to know that this is very common in the area. And the reason why it's common in the area, because there's so many people packed into so little space around here that jobs are highly competitive. And we don't think about that. We're always going to look for some other reason for why we didn't get that job. And we kind of forget that there's math involved that is running things. There's just an awful lot of people applying for the same job. And so what do we do when we get those messages, is that we tend to personalize them. Again, we start feeling rejection, and then we personalize rejection. We start thinking we are the problem. And this is not helped by resume professionals and professional job hunters who put the onus on you, because that's what we do. That's exactly what happens when you walk into a place and say, what's going on here? Oh, this is how your resume needs to be. This is what you need to put on your resume. And then we start taking on that responsibility that it's us that's the problem, instead of the fact that we have variables out here that make this more of a difficult process. So there's this unconscious idea that if I have the perfect resume, I will get that interview. And because everybody out there is selling the perfect resume, we start believing that if I'm not getting any responses on my resume, it has to be me. I'm the problem. So I'm beating myself up, and I'm feeling that rejection. And this goes into learned helplessness. Over time, we start to become more and more convinced that we are not going to get any feedback. We are not going to get any response. We are going to continually feel rejected and feel that pain of rejection. So we're going to stop. And so we do. And then we go nowhere. We're drifting. We're apathetic. We're burnt out, which is what I've been talking about the last couple of weeks, and depressed. And people wonder why we stop doing this shit. People wonder, and people get upset about it. Why are you stopping? And we can't say, we don't articulate it well, because I feel rejected. I don't think I've heard anybody ever say I feel rejected. In fact, almost 100% of everybody I've talked to about this problem, they can't articulate that they feel rejected. They're looking for answers. They're saying, I don't know. They either blame the company, or they blame themselves, or they're doing both. And I know I did it too. I got depressed because I was not getting any responses from anywhere. And because I'm a human being, that's something that I need. I need those responses. One of the unintended consequences of technology is it creates a lot of mental problems. In technologically driven societies, you have more instances of mental health issues than you do with less technologically advanced societies, because we use technology to make our lives easier, and the consequence is that we take away connection. We're always taking away human connection. We're always doing that. Even when we're trying to use technology to increase connection, we're taking away connection. So that's what's going on. That's part of what's going on when you're job searching. And you've been putting out your applications, and you've been doing your due diligence, and you haven't been getting any response back, and you're starting to flag. You're starting to feel down and depressed. How do we combat this? The easiest thing, the best analogy that I use is treat it like you're washing your dishes. That's my analogy. When you wash your dish, you don't go back and inspect to see that the dish is washed again. Well, maybe some of you do, but technically the process is something that you do because you have to do it. You do it because your dishes are dirty. So you wash the dish, you put the dish in either the dishwasher, or you put the dish in you wash the dish and put it in the dry rack, and then you leave it, and then you come back and put the dishes away. It's something that you do. It's not something that you find pleasant, maybe. It's just something that you do. There are no extraneous feelings attached to it. And that's what I'm talking about with this. First off, you apply to a job that you're qualified for. You try not to give yourself that job. You try not to promote yourself. That's a conscious activity that you need to really think about before it becomes more consistent. So you hit that apply button, you do the necessary thing. As soon as you hit send, you have to let go of that. You just put the dish in the dry rack, and you have to walk away from that. Don't expect anything. The problem is that we are expecting something back. We are expecting a return. It's part of our psychology. It's called reciprocity, that if we give something, we're going to get something back. And when we don't get something back, we feel rejected, right? So I'm putting this, and again, we're taught that effort brings reward. So we're putting an effort to apply to this company. We're telling them how awesome we are. And there's a whole thing about that as well. We're so awesome that they need to choose us, blah, blah, blah. And then they don't even have the balls or the gall to send us a thank you. Right? You see how that just worked out? You take your stuff, you hit send, you let it go. And again, that is a process that you do. It's not an easy thing. It just becomes an exercise. And if you can treat it like an exercise, if you can treat it like a chore, you divest yourself of some of that psychological baggage that you're giving yourself. Because the shitty thing about all this stuff that I talk about is that it's us. It's us that's doing it to ourselves. It's not that we don't affect other people. It's not that other people affect us. It's just that we are the progenitors of our own pain almost all the time. It's natural, it's normal, but we can do things about it. When I was talking about compassion fatigue and burnout, it's the same thing, is that there are remedies to that we can do to mitigate these problems. And this is one of the ways that you can do that with this job search business. If this is the way you're conducting your job search, which should be a part of it at least, is to treat that part of it as just part of your job. You just do it and you walk away from the results. Let the results happen. So that's it for that. We'll be right back with the question of the day. I hope you found that helpful. We'll be right back. Okay, today's question is, why do humans collect stuff? Now, there's all kinds of different things that we can think about when we collect. There's stamp collecting, there's hoarding, there's baseball cards and all kinds of collectibles, and a lot of companies do this on purpose. They create collectible editions and things like that. So there's several things that's going on here. One is competition, right? I'm going to complete this collection, and whether I'm thinking about it or not, I am comparing myself to other collectors. I have a collection that this person doesn't. And what does that do? That's a competitive thing. So a lot of times you'll hear about the thrill of the hunt, right? That's that piece. There's pleasure involved in creating this activity and creating a collection of pieces, and competitively you have more parts built in than somebody else, right? And then there's a completion aspect. We want to complete it, so we're kind of driven to do that. I can't recall right off the top of my head what that particular bias is, but we have this idea that if it's incomplete, we feel pain. So the first piece is there's competitiveness involved in this based on scarcity. And that gives you a kind of a clue as to the other piece of this, security, right? We're doing this because it makes us feel secure. This is one of the reasons why people are hoarding toilet paper during these interesting months. This is why people hoard stuff in general, is that they get a very huge sense of security by having this. It assuages anxiety. From that toilet paper thing, I've talked about this before. It's called is it zero sum bias? Oh crap. I'm just having so many problems remembering my biases today. I have a memory bias today. Anyway, we are doing these things. We engage in these things for these reasons. Competition, and the competition is related to scarcity. Scarcity is related to security. So the more, and again, that's part and parcel to the idea of a collection. So if we're talking about baseball cards or figurines or something, there's only so many out there. And that means it's scarce. And human beings are always competing over the scarcity of resources. So we have identified this as a resource. If I complete that collection, or if I engage in that business and I complete that collection, I automatically get higher up on the hierarchy, right? Because we are social beings, we are also hierarchical. That gives me, if I have a collection, that gives me social standing. That gives me social standing. It doesn't matter where that social standing is, meaning I may have a collection of something and no one else in my social circle has those. I just know that that collection that I have, other people are competing to get it. You see what I mean? So we have, and that puts me in a position of power, because then that creates value. See how I'm getting into sort of some economics here? I have created value because I have a complete collection. And that, if we talk, if you involve yourself in this kind of stuff, that certain baseball cards are more valuable than other baseball cards. Part of that reason is that particular baseball card is more scarce, meaning there were less of those printed than any of the other ones. There's a bunch of common ones, and then there's these rare cards and ultra rare cards. This is the function of this collection idea. We compete to get that because of the scarcity and the security of having it, and the social hierarchy that we can climb, even if it seems irrelevant. We get to become more valuable personally because of our collections. So our collections then become a part of our identities. Interesting, huh? I hope that was helpful. I'm going to go collect some stuff. So I will talk to you next week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do have any questions or comments or discussions that you'd like to have, please write me at mike@whatdrivesyou.net. I'm always happy to hear different perspectives, and especially questions. I love it when people ask me questions, and that gets me thinking, and that's what I like to do. So you guys have a great day, have a great week, and we'll talk next week. Bye-bye.